Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach, and today we have with us John Voris, who is a philosopher, writer, and psychological researcher. John, welcome to the program.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
So give me a little bit of background on yourself. What led you to be a psychological researcher? I don't think you just wake up one day and think fireman, policeman, or psychological researcher.
Good point. The way it began was years ago as a college student. I needed a part-time job, and my parents had been in sales, and they suggested that I try out for sales. And what was available to somebody in their 20s was a lot of door-to-door cold calling. So I took courses that were available, went to seminars and workshops, and learned as much as I could. But I went out and tried the sale, and I failed every time. I failed 7 times in a row, in fact. And then when I did, I went back to gas stations and my warehouses, and I gave up on it. Years later, I bought a delicatessen and sold it. And when I did, one of my vendors came to me and said, well, why don't you sell for me? It could be wholesale. And I said, well, that'd be fine. That'd be different. But then when my deli was up for sale, he filed bankruptcy. And so he said, don't worry about it, though. We're going to go back to the way we started 50 years ago with door-to-door cold call selling. So I now have a wife and child, and I'm looking at absolute failure. So my degree was in philosophy, and I focused on the philosophy of language. And what was missing in my training was the understanding of what communication is, how language works. And so it didn't work for me. And I make a point to say that the self-help courses and workshops, seminars, they're wonderful. That's not the issue. Some people fall through the cracks. That's what I mean. That's what happened to me. And so it occurred to me that a lot of information about language wasn't being taught. So I dropped everything I learned about selling, and I focused exclusively on European psychology. That's where I have in part of my bio as psychological researcher. And I approached existential psychology. And what they do, the Europeans look at it, like psychology, as what does it mean to be human? Western psychology out here is they define what illnesses are, and they have definitions that you either fit or you don't, and that will determine if you have a symptom or not. So this is called analytic approach, and European is called the synthetic, the synthesis of who you are. So that is what I use, and that is what gave me the answers I was looking for. But most importantly, it was about symbols. When I ask a group of people to list symbols, they usually say, well, the apple with the bite out of it is the Apple Corporation, and you can think of sports, think of basketball teams, baseball teams, etc., the cross. And that's how, in America, we're designed to look at a symbol. A symbol is an intentional object to be used as to designate something abstract. Well, in Europe, it's not that. Europe, it's anything that actually represents an abstract idea. So what that means is you are surrounded by symbols. The floor is a symbol, your table is a symbol, a microphone is a symbol, everything around you is a symbol. More importantly, these symbols are something that you chose. You chose to be there, or the symbols you have at home, the restaurant you go to. Everything you do, your clothes, your car, everything is a symbol that represents phases of who you are as an individual. What's nice about that is they're right out there in front of everyone. So by reading the objects around a prospect, I could understand what motivates them. because the object is a reflection of who they are, and they're right there. I don't have to surmise. I don't have to guess or anything like that. That makes the big difference. So by using European approach of symbolic interpretation, I was able to sell, and I cold called for 20 years, and I used this method, and I averaged 12 to 14 sales out of 20.
Wow.
But in that process, I learned what motivated people. And so since 2004, I have been assessing people individually one-on-one and finding what really motivates them beneath their personality. And this has helped them in decision-making.
So give me an example of the Western versus Eastern approach to selling. Like, for instance, if you can think of or Western or Continental, a difference is what I meant to say. Think of like a selling scenario where typically the traditional sales trainers will say, do it this way, but you discovered the better way to do it. What would that look like?
Sure. So, when you look at a brochure, you're selling something. Oh, this is a great example. You're selling exercise equipment. And the brochure for the manufacturer will tell you all the features and benefits. And this is what you're selling. But I had a client of mine who had very low sales, and they didn't understand what was going on because people would walk in, tell them what they wanted, and they would give them all the benefits they were looking for. And they'd walk out the door and say, I would think about it. Well, the issue there is they're not looking at the individual. It's not the individual is doing the buying. The corporation is setting up a kind of a structure of what they believe they're selling. And so I asked them, well, what's the age group of your people that come in and leave? And they said it was between around 35 to 45. And I said, well, your answer is they're not looking for really exercising. They want to date. They're single. This is the divorce. See? So I mean, this is the area of divorce. And so change that. And when they walk in and say, look, all I want is something just efficient, inexpensive. I want to tone up. And so do that and give it to them. And don't argue with them. Don't try to lead them into another machine. They're not looking for that. That's probably the only machine they'll ever buy. They want a date. That's what you're selling. So within 6 months, they had to buy a warehouse. That's how much they had expanded.
But how did that, in that scenario, how did the date fact come up? Did they do a survey to ask people, why didn't you buy, or what are your motivations? Or did they just take a guess and then that's what landed?
So what I did is I said, that's my suggestion. What I want you to do when a customer comes in, just have casual discussion. Why are you getting this? What's the point? And they'll tell you. They'll say, well, we kind of broke up, my wife, and I'm thinking, I might want to date in a year or something, 6 months, I don't know. And you get that from them. They will tell you. Yeah. And it did work. So that was my point. Is now you go back to Western psychology. They look at it language. It's always an analysis of what people say and what people respond to what's being said. Well, the answer wasn't there, obviously. The answer was in what was beneath all the languaging, and that's symbology, which is taught in Europe and not taught here in sales. And so I was able to get these people to really increase in their sales just by shifting the intent of their customer, by showing the intent of their customer.
Yeah, and I think that's a skill set. You can't. It's not the same formula or missing puzzle piece for each and every scenario, right? I mean, how do you train people to know in one scenario how to approach discovering that information, but in a different scenario you've got to do it a little bit differently?
Well, I have what's called authentic rapport, and it's I know who you are. By knowing who I'm not. And for example, let's say someone who's a carpenter. I'm not a master carpenter. I'm not a master carpenter. I'm not a master carpenter because of who I am. I know who I'm not. Well, part of who I'm not is I don't have patience. So would a master carpenter need patience? Well, obviously. So I know who this person is to an extent, just on the surface. So what if I were to take what I'm selling and language that towards someone who has a lot of patience, someone who is a planner, someone who understands investments over time? So this makes a big difference on the approach. And this is what I also teach, and I've had people use it, and it works. By knowing who I'm not, I know who you are. And so by using that, every time you do find out what they're really after.
Yeah, that's a really neat approach. It's kind of like the contrarian view. Here's the way it is, but if it was the opposite, and a lot of people, take those contrarian views in many areas in investing and things like that. But that's kind of when you explain that, it made me think of, you're looking at it from a whole different perspective, 180-degree difference there.
Oh, yes. I did neglect to say that I have a second book, but it's more like a journal. And that's why I didn't mention it. It's called Learn to Sell What They're Buying.
Yeah, and right.
See, that's very, very different. So
I read a book by Seth Godin a few years back. It was called Tribes, and that's one of the things that I remember from the book, which is wrap your arms so far and closely around your tribe, your customers, and then listen to them and communicate to them and ask them questions. And then when they say, "Ooh, it should be nice if I had this or something to solve this problem," then you listen and go deeper. And then all of a sudden you've got exactly what they're going to buy because they're telling you, and you're selling to them what they are wanting to buy. That's a really interesting approach.
Yeah, the key is going deeper. That's what's important. Because, if you were to ask someone who sells cars, they'll tell you, people walk on the lot and they tell you exactly what they want, and the sales rep gives them exactly what they asked for, and they still leave. And in fact, there was one of my customers was Be Back Motors. So, because everyone said, "Oh, I'll be back," but you never saw them. But they didn't do what you said, which is go a little deeper.
But then what was the solution? How did you train someone in that fast-paced car selling environment to slow it down a little bit to go deeper?
Well, when you're looking at the customer, first of all, you have to know what car are they driving now. And you ask them, why do you like your car now? Why did you like it? And in so doing, you're going to discuss decisions that were made, decisions that were actually and factually made. That's another difference. I'm not talking about what kind of cars do you like or which kind of car would you dream of having. No, I want to know what car do you in fact have, and that's the decisions you've made. And then I work from that. I teach that to all my people, and they get it rapidly. And getting back to the other issue of symbols is that I teach my people how to read symbols, and it works. It's transferable. This is not personality dependent. And this is something that I discovered. It's not really about me. It's about what I uncovered from European studies.
Yeah, neat. And let's talk about your most recent book, Discover the Power That Drives Your Personality. Talk a little bit about the 4 life themes that you write about.
Certainly. In my research, I discovered that there are 4 life themes that really run through history, in fact, ancient history, and among the shamans of the world. And they broke down humanity into 4 areas. And they use terms like mother, visionary, teacher, and warrior. You would examine another tribe of and their shamans, and it'd be different languages. But in the end, it's love, justice, wisdom, and power. And so with my clients, I go through what those really mean and start discussing just their daily life. What do you do in the morning? What motivates you in the morning? What motivates you in the afternoon? And they start discussing what happened is and they can't escape these 4. One is dominant, and that one colors everything else. And that makes a big difference, especially we've talked about careers. People are having difficulty with careers, and we've discovered exactly why they're having issues from understanding love, justice, wisdom, and power. So the love person is a caring person. the wisdom person always wants to know. The justice person is like a visionary. They're always looking for the moral and ethical side. And the power people, they're looking for change. We have all four, but one dominates. And we can find them very quickly. Usually people tell you their theme within the first sentence.
Yeah, that's to me, it makes logical sense when I'm hearing you describe that, and when I hear how you apply it, that makes sense. But I feel like a lot of people would kind of throw their hands up and go, "Oh, it's so much work, and I can't discover this and know that." Look at it from that perspective. What do you say to someone that would be interested in applying this to their personal or business life, but they just kind of feel like I couldn't do it on my own, and it's a lot of work?
Okay. What I do is I could have people understand how this works in 2 hours. I have an assessment that I do. And in that 2 hours, they see how these four archetypes are expressed in their lifetime. That's why I take 2 hours. Now, when I was selling, I had to do this within minutes. So it's not that difficult. But when I deal with people, I slow down to 2 hours and ask them questions, very simple questions. Here's one. Here's an example. If I ask you to describe an event that made you happy and then describe an event that made you upset, they will both be tethered to the same reason. And I derive that because the only single need people really have is to express their identity, and they're doing it all the time, and they do it through the objects, events, and people around them. Very simple. So the easiest thing to do is to walk in on someone where they work. All their symbols are there. Now, how to read a symbol? Well, that's simple. What does the pencil mean? What does a table mean? What does the microphone mean? That's not the issue. The issue is you did the collection. So they're tethered, all the objects around you are tethered to who you are. There's going to be love, justice, wisdom, and power. And once you understand the definitions of each, you know exactly what to look for. And it can be done in seconds.
Do you find that the application of these four are different if you're trying to apply it to a personal situation as opposed to a professional?
No, they're exactly the same.
That's encouraging.
In fact, I do couples. And what I find is, for example, if you have a justice person, I use the word justice, but they're always looking at things as a duality. They're looking for fairness, what's even, balanced, etc. And so they're always seeing both sides, which means that they're a combination of love and wisdom. Now, a power person is simply power. They're always looking for change. And they're looking for empowerment. And so when a justice person marries a power person, there's going to be a lot of conflict, and they don't last long. But a power person and a wisdom person get along very well. Then you have the love people and the justice people get along very well. And so what happens when I have a session with couples is we, first of all, have them see the dominating themes, then see that it's the theme that's having the conflict, not them. That's a very bizarre way of looking at it, but it turns out to be true. And it makes it objective. It's not personal to them. So a power person will always be looking for empowerment in themselves or the other person. The justice person will be looking for what's fair, what's right. They're more focused on values. Well, yeah, the power person has values, but it's a different kind. Will it empower me? That's what I'm looking for, my value. And so those cause conflict. Once they see it, then they understand it. Then they understand that it's not personal to them in criticism, and then they can make the proper adjustment. And I've had that happen many, many times.
You know, we've talked about people in selling situations in business and then couples just then. What is the typical client that you work with? Is it a mix between personal and professional?
Yeah. So I have, right now I'm working with a career consultants. That works out very well. They were dissatisfied with normal profiling, and I'm on the phone with their client and them, the three of us, and I assess them, and then they my client really understands what motivates that client. And here's the difference. The main issue people have, or counselors have, is they tell their client exactly what they need to do, and they don't do it. In this situation, because I really do access their primary motivations, it can't be argued. It's not up for discussion. Not only that, but the person is compelled to do what the counselor wants them to do, because all three of us know what motivates that person. It's not like they can really escape, you might say. And so she has, the one I have, 97% placement rate and a 95% retention rate over 5 years as a career counselor, which is outstanding.
Yeah, that is really neat. Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think what we've been talking about here today is just so intriguing, because there is a science behind things that we would just chalk up to typically, well, that's just the way things are. So what would you say that someone listening to this might want to reach out to you and take that assessment? What's the best way that they can reach out and connect with you or pick up a copy of your book?
Well, you go to Amazon and you can pick up a copy there, or you can go to the internet and type in johnvoris.com, and you'll be led to a consulting page, and just take it from there. One group that I really enjoy doing is 17-year-olds. They're about to embark on their college career, and they can find out what motivates them at a very young age. Couples are having conflicts. People who are going to make really just a big decision in their life. I had, I would say, many attorneys. The last, say, 20 clients I've had. They're really at an impasse. They're in the 25 to 35 years old, and they're at an impasse. They really don't know what to do. And I take them through why they're having difficulty. We discuss why some people love what they do, but they don't like who they are. Or they love who they are, but they don't like what they do. Good example is they love being an attorney, but the problem is they don't want to deal with, say, a firm that kind of pushes the hours, you might say, because they're justice people, and that's creating conflict in their life. And so once they see that, then they'll stay in the law, but they might go, well, for example, one case, they'd go to a nonprofit, and it worked out just fine. So I have people really about to make a big decision. They've been through the personality profiling instruments, and they fell through the cracks and really didn't get the answers they were looking for. And this is very different. And it is deeper, and they have to do a little work, but it's not much.
Neat. Well, John, thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful connecting with you. And anyone interested in reaching out to John, I will have the show notes with the link to his website, but it is johnvoris, VORIS.com. Thanks so much, John, for your time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.